Welcome to Interview. You're listening to part 2 of my interview with Eric W. Brown, composer for the indie video game The Messenger by Sabotage Studios. Sit back, relax, and if you haven't listened to part 1, do that. But otherwise, grab some coffee, some tea, and let's get back to the conversation.
And there's some weird emotional reaction to, like people talk about like what is cheating in music, but personally, or it's probably in design as well. But I feel like there's no such thing as cheating at creating something, because you're either creating something or you're not. And I think the only real cheating is figuring out how to make a living doing it.
Likewise, so you're writing these songs for The Messenger, and you said that you had to do it on a deadline. I mean, obviously, that you said it was about 3 years, but were you kind of like touring with your bands and writing stuff all at the same time? Like, how did that look for you?
Yeah, no, I actually was. Like I would. I had sort of stumbled into being a full-time musician prior to landing this gig. Because I've been, and I think my record for touring was like 9 months out of the year.
Wow.
And it was a lot. But then, that was like, there was a few years where that was pretty much all I was doing. And it wasn't like 9 straight months. Like I would come home for a week and then I'd go out again. And miraculously, I was playing like 4 different bands, and miraculously none of it overlapped. There was like a couple of times where I had to like move some things around that was sort of full time. And then I found myself like in between some tours. And I'd always be playing out locally or whatever. Yeah. So most of it was done at home, but I was like in the middle of something. I was always leaving to go on tour again. And towards the end of the Messenger dev cycle, Jerry hits me up. I was on the last Vans Warped Tour ever last year. And I'm sorry, it was 2 years ago now. I'm losing my mind. But I wrote 3 tracks that are in the game on the tour bus while everyone else was out partying and stuff. And I was just like, I got to get this done. But yeah, and I don't know, that's like, it doesn't matter, but it's cool that I did that. And it's only cool to me, I think.
I mean, I think it's cool.
Okay, well, that's fair.
I'm much more of a sit down and work when you've got some downtime. If you've got something going on, instead of, partying and then like being down to the wire.
Yeah. And tour is great, and it's really hectic and busy most of the time, but it's also, you find yourself with like hours to kill sometimes. Like it's a lot of hurry up and wait. Like you gotta get into the venue at a certain time, and then you do your load in, you do your setup and your sound check. And then after that, there's generally, you have a few hours to kill before the show, and even more hours to kill if you're playing later in the lineup, probably 4.5 hours until I need to start warming up to play a show. So what am I going to do? You can just like wander around. I like to go on walks to random places and eat hamburgers and stuff. Like on Warped Tour, when at least I knew exactly what I had to do. And one of the things actually was the Autumn Hills 16-bit version was, I'm sorry, not Autumn Hills, the Ninja Village. So it's like the intro level.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we had the 8-bit track was already in there, and I think we didn't realize that we would be revisiting Ninja Village in 16-bit, and we didn't have a track for it. And Thierry's the kind of guy who was like, hey, so we need this, but if you can't do it, it's all good. And I was like, no, it's not all good. Like, we need this. We need this to keep it consistent. So yeah, I mean, that was That's a case where it's kind of easy because it's already written.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to program it again, because all the 16-bit stuff was done in a different program. Because of also similar situation, it was the Genesis sound chip, and the program I used for that can output files for Genesis playback.
Now that we've kind of gotten the process and the history kind of stuff out of the way, what was the track that came the most easily to you, and why? And if you know why, that is. And then what was the hardest track for you to come up with?
I definitely put off the music box track as long as I could, because essentially the brief for that one was like, okay, so we need this thing that's instantly catchy, um, and also like has a sort of a note sequence that's repetitive. Like it needs to sound like a music box, and also the level is going to be controlled by the song. I wanted, like, it had to be good, like of all the levels that had to be good, that was one of them. There wasn't any that stand out to me as being more difficult than the other. I probably that like 8.5 minute track for that cutscene, but even that one like wasn't such a big deal. The biggest problem when you write a song that long is when you get to a point and you listen back from the beginning. So that takes time. Writing for stuff like that, I kind of just like kept adding parts until it was long enough, and then I sort of figured out how to resolve at the end. I don't think there was one song that I didn't restart to get what's in there now, because that's kind of my process. Is I'll start something, and then before it actually goes anywhere, I'll hate it and I'll start over.
I think a lot of creatives would resonate with that. I've destroyed many designs and have
Right.
started many fiction pieces like that. You get like 8 pages in, you're like,
Mm.
not it.
Scrapping this. Yeah, I mean, and that's honestly an acquired skill, is to know when to scrap it. Like it's kind of tricky to think about because a lot of stuff I read or hear about is like, finish what you start and get to the end, even if you don't think you'll do anything with it or whatever. And that's a skill set that is extremely valuable. But then the other part of it is, like, don't be afraid to just like highlight all and delete and then start fresh, because like once your juices are going, you'll find that it's easier to come up with stuff after you've already been working on something, whatever it is. That myth about like the flow state or whatever, and it takes like 15 minutes to get in it. But I think once you've already been like working on something, you're already in that mode and you want to get it done. And even if what you're working on isn't any good, you can just scrap it and start something new, and it'll probably be better. Or it'll be worse, and then you'll scrap that and you'll start it again, and so forth and so on.
Especially on that, like that first draft, a lot of the times is an ideation period where you're getting ideas churning and
Yeah.
being able to look at that and say, okay, I like these, but the execution's off. That's
Yeah.
when you know that you've got something and you dive into it.
Right. And in doing that, you might create a setting that you really like that you wouldn't have done otherwise. Or, if you're a designer, you might have made a brush to handle a specific purpose. And even though you scrapped what you were working on, you still have that tool that you can use for the next thing. And it's the same with music, like making presets and settings and stuff like that. Um, yeah. But I think it's valuable as well, just spending the time doing it, even if you don't end up with anything tangible. You're just working on your process. So
So I've got just a couple closing questions for you if
all right.
you're down for that.
Yes.
So my first one is a kind of a follow up to the, what was the hardest, what was the best. Which one is your favorite? Like which one has
uh that's like asking me which one of my children I like the most.
Okay, so maybe I'll
um
reframe the question.
mm,
What makes this, entire track set unique in your mind?
well, I don't know if that's really a fair question, because I'm just kind of standing on the shoulders of giants.
Mm.
I mean, I listen to a lot of retro soundtracks, and obviously have a deep admiration for chiptune and doing it properly. But I don't know, like I could answer that from various angles. Like it's pretty much like it's a game soundtrack. I don't think I would have written any of that stuff had I not been tasked to do it for a video game.
Mhm.
But I still stand behind it 100%, and I still like dig all those tracks.
No, I think that's actually a good answer because I think a lot of people tend to treat specifically like video game stuff as almost disposable, and I like that
Sure.
you.
Well, you get that, like, if you don't have a budget for music, you just want some dude who's stoked to make a song for a game, and he'll try to do, like, a lot of game dev is sort of reading minds and just trying to figure out what they want and how to do that. Okay, so what was unique and special about this project actually was that I was hired based on my past body of work. And the guy that wanted me to create music for his game was already a fan of what I did. So he basically wanted me to apply that to a video game. And I think, like, I could not have asked for a better working relationship. Like, I mean, he's like one of my good friends and everything now. So, but I basically got to do what I wanted to do, knowing what the task was and trying to do a good job of that. But I pretty much had free reign, as long as it fit the scenery, you know?
Yeah, that's great. You sound like you're really proud that you get to work on this game, and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think that's so interesting because I think a lot of people would look at your body of work and like what you do and like getting to tour with like several different bands and like I'm sure you're like insanely proud of all of that, but I love to hear that like no, this game was like a big deal for me too.
I played a lot of shows, sure, and I've done a lot of touring, and it's gotten to the point where touring was just like part of life, and it was also because music became music was keeping me afloat. I mean, I was like living month to month, but I wasn't starving to death. Um, so you know, I that was I never thought I would even get to that point, and then being hired to do what I was already doing, but for something else that could potentially reach a much larger audience than I could ever hope to reach on my own.
So I guess in the spirit of that, are you hoping that you get to work on more video game soundtracks?
I'm actually already working on one right now because I'm the Sabotage guy, and we're working on another project. So you'll
That's
probably hear
awesome.
about that in March or something.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't want to push you too much on it. You probably can't talk
Yeah,
about it. So
I definitely cannot.
yeah, no,
I've
that's
already
great.
said too much. But
I
I mean,
can.
it's like it's all good. It's public knowledge that we're working on.
Okay.
We just haven't said what it. I have a lot of projects that I am working on my own, and making an album just of my own stuff. Trying to not to disrespect chiptune at all, but I'm trying to. Yeah, I've been working on a lot of other music, but it was mostly like I've done some sort of, I call it like corporate music, where it's like, you know, we need a song for this commercial, or we need a song for like some like dumb corporate like web video or something like that.
There's a virtue to sticking with the thing that you know and sticking to the same audience, but I think
Yeah.
as an artist, you have to branch out sometimes and try other stuff. So I'm
Yeah,
excited to
totally.
hear kind of the evolution of your sounds and stuff as
Yeah.
you know your stuff shows up in a new game and as
Yeah.
you're completing your personal projects. I think that you're finding a really great way to mesh 8-bit, 16-bit sounds with like metal sensibilities, and it's just really cool to like listen to your stuff.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, as far as like video game music specifically, like, you know, of course, if anybody who is well organized and is and has like a budget, because it takes time to make stuff, so that's what the budget's for. I'm not chomping at the bit to get more video game jobs because I'm committed to Sabotage, and this project that we're working on is definitely full time for me right now.
Yeah.
And I'm also doing all the sound effects for that as well. So if it gets to the point where it becomes too overwhelming and we need to hire somebody, then it's kind of up to me to make that call.
Mhm.
But as of now, I'm trying to handle as much as I can. So far, so good because we're in pre-production still. It's a lot of assets, but I'm still in charge of the audio, so it's like a good position to be in. And I'm not opposed to doing work for hire. I'm committed to working for them full time, and because they empower me to still do my own things while still having something to work on full time during the day. So, but I mean, for me, at the end of the day, it's all about just making stuff and writing stuff, and that's all I want to do. So that's all I'm gonna do.
So before we close out tonight, why don't you plug your stuff? You know, your social,
My
your
stuff.
albums. Yeah, your stuff, man.
So I'm in 400 bands, and we put out 16 albums a year each. Now I have all of my Rainbow Dragon Eye stuff, including the Messenger soundtrack, is on Bandcamp, and I would say 98% of it is also on Spotify, Apple Music, all those other places as well. So go ahead and give me a stream there, or if you want those lossless downloads, just go, head on over to Bandcamp. But all of that is a great way to support independent people doing things. I'm going on tour. Actually, probably by the time you hear this, I'll be back from tour, but I'm headed to UK and Europe with Necrogallicon, and we're doing about a week in the UK headlining, and then we're taking a ferry to Europe to do a support tour with a band called Glory Hammer, which is like the cheesiest power metal you've ever heard.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, but we're going to be playing for like 1,500 people a night in Europe, so I'm looking forward to that. And then Swashbuckle is my pirate metal band. We have a 23 song album that we're kind of mixing very slowly because our engineer is a homie and he's just fitting us in between his actual paid work, and we're kind of just throwing in what we can when we can just to get it done. But no grandiose tour plans with that band. Just a few shows. We're doing a few shows actually on the East Coast in March, but we're very inactive. We're just making an album to do it. But we used to be a touring band, and now we've all kind of got our own things, so it's harder now. There is a tech death band called Veil of Noth, that's Noth with a silent P-N-A-T-H. It's a H.P. Lovecraft reference if you're a
Yeah,
fan. Yeah. That's a band that I don't tour with of late. But I'm on the last few recordings and will be on any future recording, but it's like super technical death metal, which is what I like playing the most. But in terms of touring, I chose Goblin Metal because it's already it's fun music, and I love all those dudes, and it's fun playing with them, and also the logistics are generally pretty well ironed out, so it just makes it a lot easier for me to do my job. And what else? Go listen to Magic Hammer. I put out one album 10 years ago, and that's some. If you like the sort of melodies and weirdness that I create with Rainbow Dragon Eyes, it's like that, but more like Eurobeat meets power metal.
Okay. Yeah, I can get behind that.
Yeah. So maybe check that out or not. Up to you, of course. Yeah, and actually that's the stuff I'm working on now for a new record. Take a break from releasing chiptune, and also be like, hey, by the way, I can also do this. So Yeah, I think. Plugs. I've been streaming on Twitch lately. It's kind of a new thing for me, so I'm still working it out. But if you want to get in on the ground level, twitch.tv/Rainbow Dragon Eyes. Lately, I've been doing the 60-minute composition challenge things, but I have my own Discord server where people can get in the voice chat and like give suggestions while I'm working. So that invitation isn't open to everyone. Just I usually try to keep it to around 10 people max. Otherwise, it gets pretty insane.
Yeah.
So that's fun. Probably be doing some more stuff with that. Just Shapes and Beats expansion came out. I have a track in that. I remixed a Shovel Knight song.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, man. It was great.
Thank you for having me.
You really got I guess you wet my whistle with the behind the scenes for the Messenger.
Sick.
Yeah, and also be sure to play the Messenger if you haven't. It's amazing. And with that, we'll see you guys next time.
Hooray.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Interview. Please be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and join our subreddit at r Victory or Death. Thank you for listening, and have a great rest of your week.